what's so important when you're building a platform like this is the initial infrastructure. How do you set up the infrastructure? Because this sets the template and the premise and the interface of how all of our future advanced features get implemented by our users. And so as we're revisiting some of the old no-code tools that we tried, we're like, oh, I wonder if they've like improved that logic to make it easier. And it's like, oh no, they can't, because that was really the foundation of how they built it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the LowCode Podcast. Today we have Nanxi Liu with us. She's a founder. She started, grew, and sold a business, and now she's in the no-code or low-code space. The interesting thing about Nanxi is that she's not building apps using no-code tools, but actually building a no-code or low-code tool. And that's what I want to get into on this podcast and learn why she ended up in the no-code space or low-code space and what she's seeing as a founder building a product for businesses to work better, probably. So, Nanxi, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jesus.
So, why don't you start telling us a little bit more about yourself, where you came from, like a little bit about the business that you grew and sold?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Colorado. I went to school at that UC Berkeley. And when I was at Berkeley, I loved building all sorts of random stuff, whether it was apps or websites. It was,
What
helping
was
pay
your
for.
major? Computer science?
Yeah, so I actually went and majoring, intending to major in nuclear engineering. Ultimately, I actually double majored in
Wow.
business and political economy instead, but had a lot of, obviously took a lot of engineering classes, had a lot of fun building just random apps and stuff to, make money on the side. And so one of the, apps I made, I joke with founders is, you're not an entrepreneur until you start a failed dating app. And that's exactly what I did in college.
We've
I
built
started.
so many dating apps. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so right out of college, not even finishing college quite yet, it was the week of graduation, I meet this guy who is this brilliant guy named David, and he has this idea for a smarter interactive digital signage software. So basically, screens that you can speak to and interact with. And so he was like, "Hey, I want
Was
to
that
build."
was that a unique idea? Did that already exist in the market and he saw an opportunity, or was that like a novel idea that he had?
That was probably, I mean, there's probably various forms of it, but he wanted to do it at scale. And there's nobody that was
Yeah.
doing that at scale. And so
Okay.
he was like, hey, I'm looking for a CEO and co-founder to go and build this. And I was like, all right, sure, why not? And so, his background was he was a MIT dropout turned professional poker player. And he made millions of dollars by the time he was 21 years old. So I was very impressed with him. And so I was like, all right, let's go build this thing. So that turned into Implug. Ultimately, we were not the ones that were putting up screens anywhere. We were actually just the underlying software for anyone that wanted to have real-time content showing on screens, dynamic content. So when we sold the company last year, we were one of the largest companies in the space. We were certainly the innovator in the space. And we powered screens in Fortune 500 companies into all the way to elevators, manufacturing facilities, banks, universities. You likely, when you walked into any kind of major corporate office, we were probably powering a screen there.
That's pretty cool. And why did you decide to join him? Because of his track record with his poker history, or I mean, did you, based on what you said earlier, that you were building apps and websites, you always had this entrepreneurship like bug inside of you, like you wanted to make new things. You never envisioned like a traditional 9 to 5 career.
I think I very much thought it was never going to be a 9 to 5 career. I think I wanted some kind of career that was really intense and was making most
Okay.
use. And so I had the opportunity. A lot of friends went to work full time in investment banking. That was sort of one of the highest paying jobs you can get right
Right.
out of college. And so my summer internship was actually in investment banking at Goldman Sachs. And all my friends thought it was really crazy that I wasn't going to go do that. And instead, I was going to take
Hmm.
$0 and go
Right.
start my own company. But I think at the time, I mean, I grew up not having a lot. And so for me, I didn't need money. Money didn't really drive me because I had a
Okay.
very loving family. I was always able to just, figure out how to make enough money that I could, have food
Make
and
it work.
shelter.
Right.
Yes. And beyond that, I just want to do what I love. And so I think meeting David and what spoke to me was really actually his entrepreneurial skills. I thought the idea was really cool. I had actually at the time already signed on to be essentially employee number one at the startup that one of my engineering TAs had started. They had gone through
Okay.
Y Combinator. They had really
Okay.
fancy investments. I actually worked there for one day and realized, you know what? I don't think this company is going to really work out. They ultimately didn't, but I just didn't think the space was exciting enough.
Okay.
So I think I was
Okay.
looking almost for an excuse to jump on the
Right.
next thing and
Right.
for David to come in and say, "Hey, here's what it is." I was like, "Yes, absolutely." But I was out of college, did no market research on the industry, and
Okay.
just dived, right in, which is very different than now starting Blaze, where we did lots of research, were very
Okay.
thoughtful, did tons of alpha customer interviews before building our product. I think I'm taking lots of learnings and mistakes that I made in my
Hmm.
first company into making sure that Blaze is successful and that we have very, just right in even the early days that we can build a solid V1 product. But definitely took many years to get there.
Right. And then at the previous company, you were the CEO, right? So were you mainly, I mean, you started the business, so probably you started doing a lot of things and eventually you hired people and had a larger team. But originally, what did you like the most? Did you like the selling part, the building the product, the, let's say, the financial admin stuff? What is your favorite part of that first few months or years of a new business?
The first few months, we actually had a number of co-founders. Like right off the bat, within a couple of months, our team size grew to 10 people. Um,
Hmm.
and and I would say it was a lot of the excitement. We were able to get in the tech community in Los Angeles. We had just fantastic people joining us. And my main responsibility was fundraising. It was all about how do we
Okay.
pay the bills. I had
Okay.
a co-founder who was the CTO, who was in charge of development. I had a co-founder who was in charge of design. I had a co-founder that was in charge of the on-the-ground operations, getting customers. Because at the time, when you haven't built up the reputation or the digital footprint, you don't have inbound leads, and so we
Hmm.
had to
Hmm.
go, door to door, literally knocking on
Right.
the doors of businesses saying, "Hey, would you like a screen to show, digital menus, or do you want a screen to show interactive social media where people are at your location buying something and they post it and it'll automatically show up on the screen?" So that was the pitch. And then for
Mm.
me, I
And
was
it
going,
wasn't something that existed already, right?
no,
So
no,
you
we
were
had
like creating a new category, which is extremely hard.
we were building the software from scratch. Now, what did exist is the digital signage software industry. So that was a
Correct.
very outdated
Right.
industry where we looked at software that was in this industry. We're like, oh my goodness, this is so old school. This is so difficult to use. You have to be an engineer to use something as simple as digital signage, just putting content on screens and managing lots of screens at one time. And we were all millennials. Our expectation is that
Hmm.
you have a device like a iPhone and you just know how to use it. You don't need to have an instruction manual. And for digital signage, it was like
Yeah.
lots of instruction manuals and documentation. And so for us,
It's funny that you mentioned that because I remember like years ago on Mexico City driving through and these newish digital signs were broken and then you could see that they were running like Windows 94 or something, right? And that was in the I don't know, 2010. And it was like, dude, why are you running like this outdated piece of software for this thing? And it's
Mhm.
broken, and you can see the Windows page, and you're no longer seeing the ad. So yeah, I mean, clearly, it was like ready for disruption.
Yes,
Did your clients
absolutely.
understand that right away? Was it a hard sell?
So in the early days, I would say a lot of the folks that we worked with were just installing screens. And some of them in 2012, 2013, we actually had to help them install Wi-Fi in their location. Like these were restaurants and retail stores that didn't have Wi-Fi. Now it's like
Wow. Okay.
we go anywhere and they absolutely have Wi-Fi. But believe it or not, 2012, 2013, that was not the case. So we had to even help them. Now, as time moved on, 2014, 2015, 2016, went into bigger and bigger companies. And so then we started replacing existing old school solutions. So
Okay.
at the end, when we sold the company, it was a Fortune 500 company would say, hey, we have 10,000 screens. We want to replace the software. Can you guys do that? And so
Right.
that's then what was a lot more common, or they were very familiar. They had done tons of research. I'll give you an example. Kone, one of the largest elevator companies in the world, they spent 2 years researching all of the different digital signage software companies out there because they needed one digital signage software to actually power all the future elevator screens that they were manufacturing. And so we
Wow.
became their partner where, the elevator, whatever floor you were on, all the way to any emergency alert systems, all the way to the weather and other
Mhm.
infotainment content on the screen, we were powering that.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
those were ultimately the clients that we got. But in the early days, it was really boots on the ground.
Right. 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 That's cool. And then why did you end up selling or deciding to sell? Was it always the goal?
I think, I would say vaguely, yes, it was like sort of this not super concrete, like, oh, that'd be cool if we got acquired. But
Hmm.
we were really not looking for it. I
Okay.
think by the time, I would say after 2015, we became cash flow positive. 2016, we became profitable. And in every single year since 2016, we grew double digit profitability and revenue. And so we became very profitable. We didn't raise a lot of money. In all, we raised about $2.5 million for the business and then became profitable. And most of the company was owned by insiders in the company, and so that makes us actually a very attractive target for private equity companies. They like that because they don't have to negotiate with VCs; they're negotiating with the founders. And so we would actually, I would say, um, probably every other week at least, we would get an inbound interest from a
Wow.
private equity company that said, hey, we want to buy your company. A lot of them were financial buyers, which means that they're buying you because they see you're very profitable. They
Hmm.
can finance the acquisition through debt, and you can service that debt really well while fueling, service the debt, but also fuel growth at the same time with your own cash flow. And so we
Okay.
obviously recognize this, and we're like, well, we can just do this ourselves. We don't need to. We can
Hmm.
continue growing ourselves faster. And so the multiples they were giving us on the business just wasn't that interesting for us. But then um, there was a company that came in, send me a text. One of the VPs there sent me a text message that was like, hey, give me 5 minutes. I'll make it worth your time. And you know what? He did make it worth our time. And they came in
Wow.
with
Nice.
an offer, frankly, that was just higher than any that we had received. And they said, hey, we're going to move really quickly. We really want you. And we are going to be having your software power all the existing screens. So they actually had already tons of screens. They had acquired a lot of companies in our space. And they're like, we want to actually replace
Ah,
all of that with yours. And that was super exciting for us to build something that we now know is going to now 10x joining this
right.
company. So now Implu, the software we created, I think is one of the most, if not the most popularly used digital signage software. And so we're really proud of that as a team. And it was a great return for our investors, our angel investors who, were the first ones. They got a 250x return. Like our angel
Wow.
investor, if you invested 20K with us, then you got back $5 million.
Wow. That's amazing. That's so cool. Cool. So this is a great
And
story.
so because of, we had this one exit, we're like, okay, now we know, now we're going to do research. So my same co and I, we said, all right, we're going to start the next company together as well, because we love working
Okay.
with each other and we know each other really well.
So now with Blaze, it's only the two of you.
It's three of us, three
Okay.
co-founders, but we already have a team of 13, also just going very quickly. And a lot of the folks we had from our last company, they were, our top engineers. And I joke, you don't really know if you're a good leader until you start the next company and see if people will still join you from
Yeah,
the last company. And
that's
so uh,
yeah.
we were
So
really
they
happy.
followed, which is good, right? So
Yes,
you're good
yes.
there. And then, okay, so you come from this. I mean, say you added technology to an industry, right? But now you end up in no code. So tell us a little bit more about what is Blaze, who is it built for, and especially how you came up with building this product, like coming from where you were coming from.
Yeah, so for Blaze.tech, it was a product that we always wanted to have at our last company. At our last company, ultimately, I mean, we had teammates all over the world, offices all over the world, a lot of folks in sales, customer support, product managers, marketing managers. Now, these are all super talented people. And there's always an internal tool that they wanted, but our engineers, they were always focused on building the core product. We just didn't have the time to allocate to building these internal tools, even though we know it's super important. For example, our customer support person would say, I know exactly the tool I need. Just create something simple to pull all of our HubSpot, customer data so that when I'm responding to a support ticket from the customer, I can have a little bit of background. I just want that tool, but that takes engineering resources. Another example is, we wanted just a nice client portal that could be easily put together just to track, customers can go in to track where their shipments are coming in,
Okay.
and when they're going to, receive the media player that had the Implu software on it. And so there's just this whole list. Our sales
Mm-hmm.
team wanted just an easy dashboard to see the leads and how they compare to other sales folks.
Okay.
And for HubSpot and Salesforce, there's a lot going on, and they just wanted a
Yeah.
very simple dashboard that's
Okay.
very custom to what we need. And so
Were these dashboards that they wanted, the data was coming just from one source or multiple sources?
multiple sources. And so
Okay.
there's places that they wanted to track, for example, we use HubSpot as our CRM, but it didn't capture all the different information. And so we wanted something that's really custom to us, like almost even one company dashboard that had all the major teams' KPIs shared in one. Even
Yeah.
things like that, again, takes
Okay.
engineers. And so for Blaze, when we started Blaze, it was we want to solve all of that. We want to enable all of those folks to be able to build these tools without writing any code. And
Okay.
so we set out to truly make it an interface that if you are this entrepreneurial person, whether you're the entrepreneur yourself or you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you work at a company, and you can describe or you can even like sort of sketch out the tool that you
Mm-hmm.
want, we want you
Mm-hmm.
to be able to build that in Blaze.
And when you had that idea, I mean, that idea started when you were still at the old company. Uh, were you aware of no-code tools, let's say Zapier or any other tools out there, or you came up with the idea and later on found the no-code space?
No, we use Zapier, we use
Okay.
Webflow, we loved
Okay.
no code tools.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so I think we saw these
So
as
you
like
you you thought
Zapier
that
can
there
do.
was a gap, or there was a need that wasn't met by current tools.
Yes. And so, like, for example, our customers, a lot of them are coming in where, Zapier is if you wanted to connect two existing applications together, right? You're not creating a new application or a new
Right.
interface. And so, if you
Right.
wanted to create a client portal, your own custom inventory management system, something that's a bit more complex,
Okay.
you would generally go use a developer. And so, even if you wanted to really customize, like I know there's no code tools out there where, yeah, it's great if you want something very templated, great. But for Blaze,
Okay.
it's that if you wanted very much to customize the look and feel and match your branding and build, um, essentially giving you all the tools that a developer would have to build the application,
Okay.
that's what we are capable of doing. Because yeah, there's plenty of no code tools. It's like if you want to do customer onboarding, there's plenty of no code tools that do that. If you want to client portal, certainly there are different options. But if you truly wanted all the custom capabilities as if you're like working with a developer, then that's where Blaze shines.
Right. How do you decide? I think something for no code tools like Blaze and Bubble, whatever, there's a fine line between functionality and power and making it simple for non-technical people to use it and build on top of that. And I've seen that in a bunch of tools that the more powerful they get, the more complex it is to build powerful things. How do you figure out that line? Like you want to make something extremely robust, but anyone can use it. How do you figure that 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 out?
Yeah, I think that is where the magic is. That's really, I think, the strength of our product is making it such that you can do lots of advanced things while making it super, super simple. Because we tried Bubble, and I think they're an amazing company, but there's a huge
It's
learning curve.
hard.
That's why,
Yeah.
a lot of folks will go hire somebody to go
Yes.
build something for them in Bubble, right? And so we actually have a bunch of folks that are like, well, our clients, I can't tell them to go. I want to give them a client portal that they can go and edit themselves. And Bubble, I can't really do that. And so
Right. Yeah.
we'll have folks that, will instead go build it on Blaze because it is so much simpler. It's the difference between, I think, you have the WordPress and the Squarespace of the world where it's just anyone can use it,
Right.
right? Super simple, drag and drop. Taking all of that and distilling all of the logic and the advanced functionality into that kind of interface. And we tried lots of no code and low code tools out there, plenty of them. And it was fun because this is again, both before we started Blaze and then during to see, if they've changed. And I think what's so important when you're building a platform like this is the initial infrastructure. How do you set up the infrastructure? Because this sets the template and the premise and the interface of how all of our future advanced features get implemented by our users. And so as we're revisiting some of the old no-code tools that we tried, we're like, oh, I wonder if they've like improved that logic to make it easier. And it's like, oh no, they can't because
Mm.
that was really the foundation of how they built it. They were
Right.
like,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
really complicated of like basically these charts and lines, and it was for us like confusing even for our engineers. And for myself,
Okay.
I'm actually the non-technical person on the team, so I am the perfect tester for Blaze. And so if I can't
Okay.
build in Blaze, I immediately share
Right.
back with our engineers. So because
Right.
my co-founder is an engineer, so we definitely have that balance where she's like, "Oh, well, what that means is it just is pulling that ID from that API," and I was like, "Nope, you have to say it in a different way and make the interface
Mm-hmm.
so much simpler for
Mm-hmm.
me, so
Mm-hmm.
that I know how to grab certain elements from that API because I am not a
Right.
programmer." So
I
it's
don't know what
it's
you're
really a
talking about. Right.
fantastic
Exactly.
balance.
Yeah. I think. I mean,
Hmm.
it's funny that you mentioned that. We were speaking with a hopefully client, and we were checking out a bunch of different low-code tools, like robust tools like Webflow and Bubble, others. Um, and there were some, let's say, basic things that you would think that pretty much any software would be able to do. And we're like, oh, we cannot do that in Bubble yet. Like users, you can't have a users database in Webflow today. They announced it in November. They haven't launched it yet. And you're like, how is it possible that today, and especially after they've raised so much money, we still don't have users on Webflow, right? And it's probably related to the way it was built originally, and now they have takes a lot of time and effort and engineering hours to now build that functionality that sounds basic and that pretty much every single app has. So it's yeah, I mean you're on the right track. Like it's important to think, and especially now that you can compare your idea to all of these other no code and low code platforms and see where the opportunities are in the space.
It definitely helps to not be the first mover
Yeah.
in this so that we could see, here's why it doesn't work. Here's why our team couldn't use Bubble. And again, I think Bubble's a great company. There's a lot of fantastic things that can be built on Bubble. But similarly, like the first thing that we needed was to be able to allow our clients to create lots of different users and the different users having different
Mm-hmm,
permissions
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because they're creating lots of client portals, inventory management, where again, every single person needs to have different access levels, and that's built was literally in our MVP. It
The
had
core product, right?
that.
Right. Yeah. Something something that comes to mind uh, that I don't want to say struggle, but it's always on my mind is this thing about you. You mentioned it earlier. Like you don't want like Bubble. You need to hire a developer, freelancer agency to build something for you, which probably that's not how they started. They didn't want that to happen. But then that ended up happening, right? Same with Glide and Webflow, because their sales pitch is anyone can do it. But then in many cases, you end up hiring a third party to build something for you for your business. in many cases because you don't have time or the knowledge, but also in many cases because it's just complex. Do you think that Blaze will need that interface between the product and the end client, as in an agency or a freelancer? Or do you always, like, are you trying to really get to the end user without having that intermediary helping the business to build a product?
So I am always a believer, even if something, I mean, people will still hire others to use Squarespace. So I want to make it so
Right.
easy that agencies jump at the opportunity to build on
Right.
Blaze, because I think there is something very special about having somebody who is that visual marketing, branding, um, genius to go and build something. I think that's always, and so we actually already work with lots of agencies who are like, I'm spending too much time on Bubble trying to build it for the client. I want to use Blaze.
Okay.
And so I think there's always going to be that fantastic opportunity. And so I like that a lot. So for me, it's whether it
Okay.
is the end user or you're using an agency, because I think there's, again, lots of value that an agency
Mm-hmm.
can provide. Uh, I want to make sure that Blaze stays really simple to use. And I think about it like, even like posting social media, people will hire agencies to do that. Of course, it's super easy
Right.
to, take a photo
Yeah.
and then, but there's a difference between, something that looks mediocre. At the end of the day, it's still that design and the content that you're putting out. And so, I mean, we love working with agencies. So I don't think of it as or I think of it as a and.
Okay.
We like
Okay. Okay.
end users and we like working with agencies.
Right. Blaze is a product that's for internal apps, right? Or will it ever become, or maybe it is now, I don't know, a it might be a client facing app, or is it a B2C platform, like a platform to build B2C apps, like native apps eventually, or not?
So I would say we're really good at internal applications and tools, but we definitely have folks that are building products on our site that are the actual product they'll give to
Okay.
clients. For
Like
example,
user facing, right?
yes, very much user facing. I mean, we have one where they are a company that enriches LinkedIn data. So you basically input all the different people's LinkedIn profile URLs, and then it spits out all the additional details about that person with their email, their primary email, their personal email, where they worked on before, data that you otherwise couldn't see unless you had like a first or second degree connection with them. So that's like a
Yeah.
tool,
Okay.
and it's all built up, you know, in Blaze. The interface is on Blaze. Of course, they've created APIs that call different things, but they use Blaze to
Right.
then connect all that information together and have basically the actual tool, the only tool that the customer really sees. And so we
Mm-hmm.
definitely have that, although we were not intending, but I would say that's a
Right.
testament to the power and capability
Right.
of Blaze. Our focus still is, the admin panels for people to
Mm-hmm.
use.
Mm-hmm.
Able to augment their Salesforce or Marketo or MailChimp information into custom dashboards.
Right. And how do you do your go to market strategy? Because something, at least that we've struggled at the agency, is that unlike a software or a specific tool, I mean, people look for like an email client, let's say. I mean, probably nobody looks for client email anymore, an email client anymore. But in your case, when you're building or when you can build very custom solutions in your platform, how do you get users, right? Because at least we have clients, let's say in the healthcare industry, and they're looking for a very custom solution for an internal, let's say an internal app that manages their billing, right, at a small healthcare facility. So there is not a software that does that. So the like it's hard to do SEO for these topics when they're very generic. They just want to build something custom for themselves. There's nothing to compare it with. How do you get clients? Are you going? Are you doing direct sales, or are you leveraging SEO? What do you think works best?
Yeah, so right now you're looking at the only salesperson in the company. And even for me, I'm not doing any outbound sales. It's actually all been inbound. And I think we have just some fantastic organic leads come in. And so how are they
Okay.
discovering us? And so I, will post things on my LinkedIn. I did one LinkedIn post when we launched our product, and we just got so many signups and I think a lot of word of
Wow.
mouth, just both on Reddit, and there was a TikTok video that talked about us, and that kind of went,
Okay.
a little viral. And so that generated a lot of interest. And I think what's special about Blaze is you can create tools that sometimes are almost like so basic that there's no standalone company that can survive on just like doing a no code of that. And Blaze is sort of like perfect. And at the same time, there is Blaze is this perfect one where if you have a use case that's so specific to you, it's hard to find one that also fulfills. And so I think we get a lot of these types of use cases where it's I'm trying to combine billing with uh, having a client portal that shows all the strategy with a task manager that our clients can go in and they can even edit, the tasks and see which account managers on them, edit if they need to add notes to the task. And so that's been super popular, which is, taking Airtable, like right now, a lot of task management is tracked in Airtable and then putting it in a nice professional web application with your company's branding that, shows and allows the client to edit all of this information. And you can make sure that the client only sees theirs, while on the back end for Airtable, you can see all the clients and you don't have to change your workflow. It's just giving the clients this nicer interface. And so that's been also pretty popular.
Yeah, we've seen clients who their employees just hate working on spreadsheets, either Airtable, Google, whatever. But then you have the same data on a nice looking app, and then everybody comes in and works because they at least they just see the data that they're supposed to, and just a nicer interface. We were so used to using good looking apps that when it comes to work and you have to work in a spreadsheet, people are like, "Oh, this doesn't look nice. It's overwhelming, maybe." And then they build these apps on top of traditional databases, spreadsheets, and just the user experience is so much better, and people work better.
Exactly. And so for these applications, we've definitely just seen for our clients' engagement with their own clients, it has just increased
Right.
because of it.
Right. Cool. So where can people learn more about Blaze? Clearly on your LinkedIn.
Yes, best place is to go to www.blaze.tech and then sign up and try Blaze.
Cool. Excellent. Nanxi, thank you so much for being today with us.
Jesus, thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you. Take care.